Good evening and welcome to the Personnel Committee meeting has now come to order. I've asked Justice Robert Dennis if he would lead us in the prayer and the pledge. Justice Dennis.
Thank you. May we pray. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you at this time. We just ask for your wisdom and discernment for this committee. Pray that you would help all of us to help make wise and good decisions. Also, pray that you would just bless our Washington County employees and their families during this COVID time. Pray that you'll keep them safe and just bless them for all their efforts and their work. Also, if you would be with our citizens of our nation and also all of our county during this time of COVID, and pray that you just remove this virus from us. Pray also that you be with J.P. Washington, and pray that you just bless her. She has a special occasion tonight, and pray that you give her the strength that she needs.
Amen.
These things we ask and pray now in Jesus' name.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Justice Dennis. Before we have a motion to adopt the agenda, I would like item number 5 to be removed from the agenda. This is an item that should have been discussed in June, and so much time has gone by that we're moving forward on it, so it's a moot point. So do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Has adopted. I have a motion and I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda has been adopted. Item number 4 is the chairman's report. When I was first elected by my colleagues to chair the Personnel Committee, we had an objective to bring effective change to Washington County Personnel Committee by creating active involvement among the committee members, build positive relationships with elected officials through communication and collaboration. As a veteran justice of the peace on this court and personnel chairman, I have sat in elected officials' offices listening to their concerns, their personnel needs, their frustrations, and their desire for change. So therefore, we came up with a plan of action, an engagement plan of action to drive this change. I stated in February that my goal for 2021 is to engage elected officials in identifying and formulating an improved employee salary plan and legislating policies for positive influence. I want to say that this is a wonderful personnel committee. Each of you have contributed and brought ideas and discussion. You have collaborated with other elected officials and brought insights, and we've had very good discussions, positive discussions. And I'm so pleased to say that through your attitude and your efforts, we have eliminated a negative element to county government. And I want to say thank you to each committee member. Our plan of action outcomes was through communication, committee members engaged elected officials to gain understanding of staffing employee needs. Through collaboration, we identified and eliminated the negative elements, preventing us from moving forward and gaining momentum. Through feedback, we listened and evaluated collaborative reports during committee meetings. Through the Johansson Group report, market pay study recommendations, we identified measurable outcomes. Therefore, the Personnel Committee recognizes Washington County employees are the most important component in good service to the people of Washington County. Therefore, we are making a recommendation. Our recommended action is to implement a merit-based employee salary metrics with positive influence. The reason for the merit-based metrics is for recruiting and retaining well-qualified and talented employees. Why a merit-based metrics? Because it is a simple, positive measurement system designed to reward all employees. Secondly, the Personnel Committee recognizes that the pay grade range was last modified in 2016, identifying the need to raise the salary range structure reflecting 2021 values. What is the reason for adjusting the structure? It is to bring the current job evaluation formulation structure from 2016 market values to 2021 market values. In order to adjust the structure, an across-the-board 10% increase will be assessed to all grade range points. Why is there a need to move the structure? We need to move the structure because adequate compensation is a key factor in attracting and retaining a quality workforce. We also already have in the Personnel Handbook outlined processes and procedures for merit and salary range compensations, and you can refer to page 25 through 31. That is my assessment to listening to all of the reports in our recommendation. And what are we going to do with this recommendation? We will recommend and pass this on to the Budget and Finance Committee for review, that we, the Personnel Committee, agree and desire to see this structure moved. But to further fill in the details, because of my absence, I have asked Blair Johansson and Chief of Staff County Attorney Brian Lester to field any of the questions that the committee might have regarding the pay range and the structure, merit-based structure. So either gentleman would like to go first. Who's on first? Mr. Johansson. Now, if you, just to refresh your memory and refresh mine as well, we did look at the structure that the Johansson Group presented to the Quorum Court last year, and that was the models that we looked at, and we saw just how far behind Washington County was. Blair Johansson.
Okay, thank you, Madam
for being
Chair.
here.
Appreciate your comments on behalf of the Personnel Committee about the focus that you have for developing relationships with all the elected officials and seeing the employees as being a very important asset for the county and for county services being provided. I'm happy to answer any questions. I can take you through a quick overview or just go ahead and answer questions related to what's being recommended about the adjustment to the range structure that's been already presented by the Madam Chair.
What is the committee's pleasure on that? Do you want an overview or just field questions on where we're going from here? An overview would be nice.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So this will just be about 10 to 12 slides that will give you a quick overview of the update for this year. This is a process that we do each year about this time, where we're looking to see how we're comparing our wages, our employees' wages with the market. And then also we're looking at our structure and how does our structure look compared to the market, and making recommendations that have been made by the Madam Chair. So one of the things we do is try to provide a reference of what's happening in the marketplace. So in Arkansas, we'll reference what's called the World at Work study. This is a national study that drops down to the state level, looking at adjustments in pay for either the current year and also for the projected year. So for 2020 timeframe, we just had a little bit of the impact of the pandemic on wage adjustments at 2.8%. Previously, before the pandemic, we were a little bit above 3%. For 2021, the average started to tick up towards 3%, and then the projected national average for this next year, and this is also being influenced by inflation, will be 3.3% on the average. looking more locally is the NOARC study that we do each year, which is an inclusion of both public and private organizations. This year we had 41 organizations. Anyway, it's broken out into general increases, merit increase averages, and total increases. And you can see we're anywhere from about 2.88% up to about 3.3% on a total basis. Okay. It's not moving. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, so on this particular slide, then, and it's not syncing up with me, but that's okay. So 2.88% to 3.3% on a total basis projected. So we're going to see overall averages going above 3% for this next year based on the anticipated inflation. All right, and then on this slide, what we're looking at is the overall market variance. And this provides you the different organizations that we're comparing with for the study. So historically, we've been benchmarking the Department of Labor for Northwest Arkansas market, Salary.com, which is a national database that's indexed to the local market for this metro area. And then the Northwest Arkansas cities, and those cities represent the 4 large cities for Northwest Arkansas, the NOARC survey, and then the Benton County referenced, where we're benchmarking Benton County against Washington County. Based on the total number of titles, so where you see the titles column, we're comparing anywhere from 173 positions with pay to 184, where we look at the Department of Labor. And we're anywhere from 12.1% behind the Department of Labor average compared to Benton County, where we're about 5.8% behind Benton County's current pay. This is where we're taking current pay by title against their current pay by title and comparing them against both public and private sectors, so we get a good mix of what's happening in the marketplace. We're seeing a progression of being behind market because the market's moving a little bit more quickly than the county. So we're now at 9.78% behind market on a mean basis and 10.41% behind on a median basis. Referencing 2 years ago, we were at about 5% behind market on the mean value and 5.45% on a median value. And this is a process that we go through each year, where we're evaluating current pay against the market. On this slide, you'll see a progression over the last 10 years. I have in the blue shaded area where we were closer to market, anywhere from about 2.2% back in 2012, 3.31% behind market in 2015. And then we started to take a little uptick on being behind the market at a higher percentage value. So anywhere from about 4.11% in 2018, and then up to 9.78% behind market for this year. So it's really time to address this variance, because in the past we've recommended being about 3 to 4% behind market. You'll see on the average 4.76% behind market, given a little bit of room for the retirement plan and its value to the employees. So that we said, okay, typically our policy would be let's match market on pay and let our benefits help us to attract and retain. And know that we could have a buffer of about 3 to 4% because of the retirement plan. Well, now we're pretty far behind in relationship to that 3 to 4% behind market when you look at the overall 10-year average. This scattergram is something that we use each year. Each dot represents an employee. It's their current pay associated with their position and the value of their position based on the job rating points. So it's what we call points in pay. So it represents a visual image of 512 employees, 512 employees. This doesn't count the sheriff's enforcement positions that are on the step pay plan. This represents all the other employees. And what the blue line represents in this chart is the average. It's the average of all pay, so it gives us a reference point of what average pay would be. The green line represents the minimum, the orange line represents the midpoint, and the red line represents the maximum. That's the proposed schedule that you're looking at with the 10% adjustment. And so we're looking at how employees' pay falls within the proposed structure. You'll see historically, as a reference, historically, last year, we were at about 48% above midpoint and 52% below midpoint. When you move the structure as proposed 10%, you're going to see the percentages change. So now we're looking at 26% above range midpoint, proposed range midpoint, and 74% below. But now think about it, 6 years that we've not adjusted the structure, and now it's time to adjust the structure because we're getting behind market. It's going to be harder to attract and retain employees if we don't adjust the structure. So in reference to adjusting the structure by 10%, if we back into that based on 6 years, once we get to next year, 2022, we're looking at an average adjustment of 1.67%. Most structures move on a per year basis, either per year or every other year, depending on the organization, 1.5 to 2%. So a 1.67% is right in the ballpark with what you would see as far as the structure. But Washington County's delayed that for 6 years now. So there is a cost associated with moving the structure, but once you get competitive and you absorb that cost, then you're able to attract and retain employees, as mentioned earlier. All right, so 2 options that are being presented. One is to increase employees' pay by 3.5%, or it's the greater of 3.5%, or the amount to reach the employee's 2022 pay grade minimum. So some employees it's going to take more than 3.5% to get them to the pay range minimum for their pay grade. And then the other option is option B, and both of these are looking at what the county can afford. What can the county afford? Can we afford a 3.5% overall adjustment and more to get folks to their pay grade minimum, or a 3% adjustment and the balance to get them to minimum? So option A or B, and I'll have a value associated with that here in just a minute. And then on your employees at the maximum, historically we've recommended not adjusting their pay when they're at the maximum of the range. Each year, as part of your budget decisions, you make a decision to apply a value to those over the maximum, and they continue to be over the maximum. Or what we're recommending is that you not pay to their base pay, not increase their base pay, but give them a one-time check equal to 3% of their base pay, but not add it to their base pay, so that we're not perpetually trying to move people out beyond the maximum of their pay range. And then for the Sheriff's Enforcement Division, adopt the 2021 City of Fayetteville pay step plan for the 2022 county budget. And so I think about 3 years back, we adopted the City of Fayetteville pay structure, and since then they've had 2 adjustments. So we're recommending that you pick up their current structure and adopt that for the sheriff's 2020 county budget. All right, so on the cost of option 1, the 3.5% increase represents a little under $700,000, and the balance to bring the employees, the remaining amount that's needed to bring them to the minimum of their respective pay grade minimum is $615,049. So a total of $1,314,963. So $1,314,963. Option B is a little bit less than that, and that's mainly because we're looking at a 3% adjustment as opposed to a 3.5% adjustment. But, and that drops down to $1,248,852. And then for the sheriff's plan, that'll be built into the sheriff's budget based on adopting the City of Fayetteville current pay step plan. Any questions? Would be happy to answer those at this time.
I have Justice Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Johansson.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
I like everything I see. The one thing I didn't see that I want to see, and maybe it's there and I just don't see it. And so explain this one to me. My deep concern is the person who's making $11.16. And everybody says, ooh, got a 10% raise. And you know that that's 11 cents
Right.
an hour. And that's, you know, that's the problem with percentages. And I'll go on record as saying this. I am totally against a percentage type raise when it comes to minimum wage people because they never come off the bottom. They never get a boot up. You know, you get 11 cents. Well, my gracious, your grocery prices are going to go up more than that. So how do we get the ones on the bottom up where they need to be?
Right. JP Dennis, good question. A couple ways that we do that. With the 10% adjustment to the range structure, we go from $11.08 to $12.19 minimum. So that's one of the ways that we get the opportunity for those that are at the lower end of the schedule to move up to a higher minimum. The other option is that the court will rotate, not on an every year basis, but where you do 75 cents or a dollar increase as opposed to a percentage increase. We do not recommend that you do a dollar or a cent increase every year because what that'll do is create compression because of the value of the dollar at the lower end of the schedule starts to compress against the upper part of the schedule. So what we recommend is that you alternate where you do years where you'll do a 3% or 3.5% increase as opposed to 75 cents or a dollar.
Okay. Well, a little bit more to that then, and you said the recommendation was $12 and something?
Well, that the range minimum.
The range minimum.
For
Okay.
grade
All right.
6, for grade 6, right now would be $11.08. With the 10% adjustment to the range structure, it'll go to $12.19. So the folks that are currently at the minimum, 11, I think we have at least one or two folks that are being paid $11.08. They would go up to $12.19.
Okay. What can you tell us about minimum wage federally going to $15 an hour as suggested? So is that going to come about? And if it does, when would it come about? And when would we need to raise it again?
Yeah, so again, a good question. We're seeing that being an influencing factor when you look at the $15. At the federal level, when you look at $15 and the type of positions that are at the federal level, some of that is being influenced to get to 15. When you work back down into the local communities, the state minimum's $11. There's 26 states that are still down at $7.25. So Arkansas has made some great progression when you look at minimum compared to several states that are still at the old federal wage rate of $7.25. We will see the market move towards, let's say, $12, $13 an hour. And we're seeing that with several of the Northwest Arkansas cities where their minimums now are $13 and around $13.50 is the minimum for most of the larger cities, not the smaller cities, but the larger cities.
Well, that 1116 example, excuse me, I didn't put that in the form of a question, ma'am. I apologize. But in discussion, just for discussion, that $11.16 that I use is $23,212.80. We don't expect those employees to go out and work another job because we want them pretty much to be faithful to us. but 23,212 is just about what you make on Social Security. And you should have been setting some aside to make that stretch, because you can't make it on $23,212. And I'm deeply concerned about those employees, and I appreciate anything that we can do for
Right.
them, but so far what I've heard is not enough for the bottom.
Right, sure. And at that particular grade, in the position, the custodian position, is there's 6 employees that are in that grade, and then we move on up beyond we get into the neighborhood of $12 to $14 minimum as we start moving up the schedule. So the ability to move the schedule to be competitive is the whole structure, and then being mindful of what needs to happen, like you're saying, at grade 6, where we have 6 employees that are going to move from $11. Some of them are above 11, but I think a couple of them are at the current minimum would go to $12.19.
Yeah. I'm sorry, it just doesn't impress me, $12.
Right.
You know. Well, thank you. I think you always do a wonderful job, and thank you for keeping us abreast of where we should be. Now, if we do the right thing and just get us there, that'll take care of it, won't it?
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, JP Dennis.
Not to sound too harsh, but there's just, I think, 3 at minimum wage that just got started with the county, and they've been with the county just a few months. And they quickly are able to move to midpoint, which the midpoint right now is $13.04, and then the maximum is $15.65. So they have an opportunity to move rather quickly and not stay at the entry level. Usually it's just you're hired, you've been working a month, maybe 3 months with the county. And I believe that there needs to be an equitable transaction between an employee and an employer. What do you bring to the employer? What talents, what gifts, what abilities? And the transaction is, okay, then I'll hire you at set grade. But this is just an entry point, and there's only, I think, 3 people that just got started. They don't stay there. Anyway, just to make that comment, I have Justice Lemming.
Is it on? Joe, I know you talked about a lot of that comparison. Did you ever, in your comparison, see numbers of $12 and $13 and $14 an hour for like heavy equipment operators and truck drivers?
So our heavy equipment operators are further up the schedule, and we compare against the market. So let's say that, right.
Sorry to interrupt, but you said against the market.
Right,
How about the market right here at Northwest Arkansas?
correct.
I mean, I hear a lot of I know guys that's making $30 and $40 an hour running equipment. We're not even paying $18 an hour running equipment. That don't jive. There's concrete truck drivers making $22 and $25 an hour. We got guys down here making $14, $15 an hour. How are you gonna keep them? That's what I'm trying to compare.
Right,
True stuff right here where we are, rather than stuff way off and stuff that don't make sense.
Right.
I mean, we got to get these guys off the bottom, and you'll never do it percentage-wise. So if we need to say, greater guys, you're fixing to get $25 an hour, that may be what we need to do. But we cannot keep asking people to come to Washington County and work for nothing. It just don't work. That's why our turnover is terrible. That's why we can't keep employees.
Let me get another document real quick to answer your question.
Yeah, I talk too loud. And we have a lot of higher up people that's making pretty good money, and then you give somebody making $100,000 or $60,000 a 10% raise, that looks a lot prettier to them. But when you get these guys on the bottom for $20,000 down,
Right.
that's really a slap in the face.
Yeah, so for our heavy equipment operators, under the new proposed structure, we'd start at a minimum of $14.48, midpoint $16.09, and a maximum of $19.31.
Yeah.
So
Let me-
couple ways for us to get there. One is to move the structure Secondly is to, right now, they're in a pay grade 11, and they're about 2 points away from the next pay grade. So combination of new structure and reevaluating the value of the position can get us closer to the market and help to address the question that or the statement that you're making.
Lisa was making a comment about good people. We had a Washington County hired a gentleman I know that had 17 years running equipment. He's an ace on a grader. You bring him in, you know, he's used to making $30 an hour, and he comes into Washington County making $15 an hour. There ought to be a way that we can pay that guy for his services.
Right.
And it's going to be hard to keep a gentleman that's an ace on a hand to do that.
Right. We do also have an HEO2 level, so that's an opportunity to move up the schedule is the HEO2 level. And that puts us even closer to market.
Well, we've had no choice but to get our people off the bottom, to
Okay.
get them to where they need to be.
Sure.
And moving the structure is a means in accomplishing that, is it not, Blair? Moving the structure?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And that's what we're trying to do. So rather than, I guess, defending Washington County, we're trying to move in a positive direction. We're trying to gain momentum and legislating positive policies is what we're trying to do. Okay, next. Do I have any other comments? Any other questions? Also, I have Justice Rios Stafford and then followed by Justice Deakins.
Thanks. I just wanted to make sure I understood the two options correctly. The first part's clear, obviously, the dollar amount difference between the 3.5% and the 3%. Could you just sort of explain the second part, the difference between the 615 and the 648? Is the difference between those two just because?
Because the 3.5% adjustment on the first option lessens the amount of expense to bring the remaining employees to the new pay grade minimum. And that's why it's less, because you're absorbing more in the 3.5% employee increase.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chairman Deakins.
Thank you, Chairwoman Ecke. A couple things that I think are really important to keep in mind when we're looking at these salaries is context. And last year, we went with a flat dollar amount raise to try to help bring some of these people up. So I appreciate Mr. Johansson's viewpoint that maybe we should alternate between those. And so this year, I think we have to be much more competitive by doing these salary range increases. And what I'd also say is, you know, we're so far behind now that we have to keep committed to what the county can afford this year. But we all in this court, and it comes at a good time this year that we'll be here next year, we have to remember that next year that this is going to be a continual investment to bring our people to market. And I understand the concerns about benefiting the people on the bottom of the ranges, but I also think, you know, we have 512 employees that we want to keep here in all of our positions. And so I guess what I would say is I've learned a lot about this with Mr. Johansson the last few weeks, and a lot of energies went into this. I don't think any plan is ever perfect, 100% perfect, but I think this really gets us somewhere. And I want to really impress upon you how big it is to move the ranges up 10%. It gives the elected officials and the department heads, after we do that, a lot of flexibility to go back to their staff and over the next couple of years look at where they want to make some changes. So I'm very excited about this. It does come at a great cost, but I think we've seen that the employees have performed over the last year with all the unexpected things, and I'm certainly ready to make the investment in our employees. So I hope we can, you know, from the budget standpoint, I hope we can do option A, and I'm ready to do whatever I can working with the elected officials to do that. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Justice Deakins. Are there any further questions for Blair Johansson? Thank you. Oh, one more? Okay.
I know we've become buried in numbers at times, and, but at the same time, we're working off of this and watching on the screen. Is there a place for us to read more details? To see the details?
Oh,
Can you make this information available to the court? So that way we can just study it a little bit better?
yes, this information, and then what we call Exhibit 6. We can
Yes.
probably provide that without the employees' names.
That would be
So
great.
from a confidentiality standpoint.
Well, I pulled my $11.16 out of the air, and so, but anyway, thank you.
I'm with you. All right, thank you.
At this point, I feel confident to recommend to the Budget and Finance Committee that we, the Personnel Committee, recommend the structure to be moved. And the option A is to be considered for our employees. I have a motion to pass this recommendation on to the Budget and Finance Committee by Justice Lemming and a second by Justice Dennis. Is there any other discussion? I have Justice Pond.
I just, I did want to say that, you know, with all this going on, and I really appreciate everything we can do to make our salaries more competitive. The road department, as I understand, did lose another good employee today. So, if we do what we can do, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Pond. I'm going to public comment unless, you sure may. Justice Dennis.
And I know this is a little rare, but I asked J.P. Washington, she had to leave, and so I asked her anything that you want, and she specifically said, I want the bottom employees to come up because, you know, percentage doesn't do it. She was wanting the bottom employees to make more. Thank you. I said I would say that for her.
Okay, thank you. Now we're moving on to one more. Okay, Justice Stafford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to go on the record. I agree with everything that J.P. Dennis has said and agree with what J.P. Washington has stated about bringing folks up from the bottom. I would prefer, to see us have a higher, bottom basically at the range 6 than 10% would bring us up to. And so I think, I'm not sure what our process might be to look at. I'm fine with every other aspect of this, but what our process for looking at that or amending that or making a decision on that would be.
Thank you, Justice Stafford. Do you have any public comment? I have Assessor Russell Hill.
I just want to commend the Quorum Court on looking at this seriously, and I like the way the direction it's going because everybody seems to be in favor of it. We are finally in a situation that we haven't been in since I've been in office, which was 2015, and that where we're actually operating with money in the bank, that we have more money coming in than we have going out. And so it's good to see that we're looking at rewarding our employees or helping to keep them and retain them, especially with all that they've been through. Looking at my chart here, I just looking at some numbers today. I have 36 employees. 12 of those make under 16 an hour, and 10 of those 12 make under 15 an hour. And so, I've got a third of my group that that are really, and then, of course, everybody knows the cost of everything is going up. So I just want to commend you in doing everything that we can to make sure that we take care of the people now that, because we've really been, all of the offices in the county have really been watching our budgets, I know as long as I've been there. And really, everybody's really, sacrificed. And so I'm glad that we're finally, with the reappraisal, we have money coming in, sales tax. We've been breaking records on revenue coming in there from sales tax and stuff. So we can do this even without raising taxes, which is great because nobody wants to raise taxes. So we still have that coming in. Construction, we have nearly $700 million in new construction in Washington County this year. And so these are, again, trends where the money's coming in. Thank you for considering and investing it into the people here that are doing the work, and I appreciate it, and I hope we continue on with that same spirit. Thank you.
Lisa?
Thank you, Assessor Hill. Yes, Justice Lemming.
Mr. Hanson, I want to ask you a question about how do you get a number off of a vehicle? We seem to have lots of vehicles drove home from the road departments, sheriff's departments. Is that, do you figure that as a wage, salary, just a gift, thank you, or how's the best way to figure that or think about that?
Good question, because it's out there as far as how.
It's out there.
On how organizations handle it. A lot of it is dependent on the position and the need for that position to have quick access to that particular vehicle, either on an on-call basis, 24-hour basis. Typically, that's driven. One of the driving factors is the ability to get in that vehicle and be available in short notice. So because of that, and that being the requirement of the job, that puts probably a little less emphasis on it being a benefit or some type of value to the employee, even though it represents a value because it replaces the cost of the employee having to travel to work with their own vehicle. But typically, there's a trade-off there on why that person is driving the company vehicle or the county vehicle.
So basically, you're really saying there's no value to the employee.
Well,
They've got to be value to it somewhat.
sure.
That's a lot of gas, a lot of insurance, a lot of wear and tear. That's a lot.
True, and some of that's absorbed because of the organization recognizing the need for that employee to be available for the citizen if an emergency occurs. So there's some trade-off value that the organization is trading off for the employee's willingness to be available and ready to respond in quick notice.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, also, one thing that I would like for us to, is there any other public comment? Oh, okay, I have Sarah Moore.
I was going to make one too about Willie's.
Okay. State your name and your address.
Hi, Sarah Moore, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I appreciate the conversation tonight, and I appreciate us looking at compensation for the rest of the county employees, because I know, some of the other compensation has come up over the last several months, and there's been a lot of community feedback saying that we wanted to make sure that we took care of everyone, within the county, and so I appreciate all the diligence that's happened. One of the areas that's come up a little bit tonight and continually said we would come back and visit it are those people that are making at the very lowest. I've heard the number say it's 70-something people, or maybe it's 120 that make under 15. I have concern because, the pandemic has really, and as in Arkansas right now, we're the number 7 infected with COVID in the entire world. And so it's exacerbated a lot of the issues, in Arkansas and here in our county. We have very high poverty in the state of Arkansas, and particularly in Washington County. I'm going to read some statistics from Bread for the World that I think are really important to think about. 1 in 3 children and 1 in 6 women are living in poverty. For a family, an individual is going to have to earn $14.18 per hour in Arkansas to provide for a family. And so whenever we're really thinking about the pay structure, I would really like to challenge everyone to think about if there is a creative solution. I understand this potential thought of like alternating between, merit and then maybe we bump up the pay the next go round. But I would say, given that the surplus we have, given unprecedented times, this is an opportunity to do something very creative. Could we not think about a hybrid system where the folks making under 15 get an immediate bump to 15? I did some napkin math. If you look at that, those 120 folks, it's a $1 million hit. And that doesn't sound good initially, but if you think about there's been some individual increases that we've had that have been quite substantial. And so I really ask you to consider whether or not this is enough today, and if we can have further conversations about how we bump up those folks that are under 15 an hour, given we know folks are living in poverty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. I would like to make one quick mention on the job evaluation scale formula. If we could make sure it's, grade 6 and 7 are duplicated. So when we make our new structure, perhaps we can eliminate the duplication in pay grades and just make sure that we don't have that duplication. Okay. Certainly.
Thank you for your comment about those two grades being the same. It was intentional because what we were trying to do is consolidate and bring the lower grade up to the next grade up. And so it was one way for us to address the janitorial or custodial positions and move them up one level and drop a grade. So that's why those two, it was intentional for them to be the same.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have to communicate that to our Mr. Comptroller in his office because they're the ones who brought this to my attention.
Right.
And there was no rhyme or reason. They couldn't figure it out. And I said, I don't know, but
Yes.
we'll find out.
So
you
at
know.
one time, we had 3 grades at the lower level that were all
Okay.
the same. And we dropped 1 grade and moved the custodians up 1 level. So that's why they have those two
Okay.
combined.
So please know that we are trying to take care of those that are at the lower end of the scale.
Right.
And doing the best we can. With that said, all in favor of recommending this to,
Go ahead and call for the vote.
okay, all in favor of passing this recommendation on to the Budget and Finance Committee? Say aye. All opposed? It passes. With that said, we have a jail and law enforcement.
Wait,
Com-
if
committee.
you could, I wanted to comment about what Willie had talked about, because not often you see something on the way here that you can make a comment, a positive comment, but also came out on 170 onto 62, and one guy was broke down in one lane and had someone else jump starting him in the other lane, and had one lane open, even though there's the turn lane. And anyway, guess who's sitting there? Washington County Sheriff, taking care of things because he was on his way home. And so he was off duty and on the scene and took care of it. And he was in one of those cars he was driving home. That was my point on that I wanted to make. Go ahead.
Well, the
Thank you.
sheriff's department's a lot like the fire department.
Excuse me, you don't have the floor. Thank you. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.